Thanks, Connie. So I thought about a couple of anecdotes with JLT and me. So I submitted my first JLT paper when I was still a PhD student in Vienna. And at that time, it was still mailed in. So you had to mail a bunch of paper over the ocean, and then you wait for eternity. And then you get your reviews back, and they were not so good, not so good. And then you submit your revised version, also a big stack of paper. And by that time, I had started at Bell Labs, and the reviews were still not back from the re-revision. So I contacted the editor-in-chief back then, who was Rod Alphoness. And at that time, I just started. So Rod was my boss's boss. So I asked, what's going on with that paper? I'm still waiting for the revisions. And he said, don't worry, they'll come. And then I passed by Ellen Gnauck's office, and what is on his desk is my paper. So that was fun back then. And of course, Ellen being Ellen, he's a superstar. And I didn't say a word, of course. I just silently ignored what I saw, and I waited patiently for the paper to be reviewed, and it was reviewed and it was accepted at the end. But that was my first real interaction with JLT. Um, so when I took over from Connie, and Connie said that the very important thing, the impact factor was something that really was important at the time. If you wanted to make a journal successful, you needed to boost the impact factor. You like it or not, doesn't matter. I don't personally like the impact factor, and I've always been vocal about that, but doesn't matter. You have to play with where the game is. So I studied the impact factor very, very carefully. I studied, I looked exactly how it's calculated. Went to the databases. I found mistakes. I went to the Web of Science. I found omissions there. I contacted whoever Reuters or whoever was the company behind it, and made sure that all the JLT papers are actually put into that database so that the impact factor is properly calculated. And in a journal that's not commercial, non for profit, not like Nature or Science, in a journal that's a community journal, you can't play tricks like Nature and Science do with their editorial selections to boost the impact factor with a PR machine behind it. You have to be smart about it and understand it well. And if you understand the impact factor, then you can boost it. So what is important for the impact factor? It's everything that was published in the last 2 or 3 years. I forgot the formula already. So that's when we established the JLT award. And how is the JLT award awarded? It's exactly using the impact factor metrics underneath the hood. It's like, what are the papers published in the last 2 or 3 years that got the most citations or the most downloads? I mean, we look at multiple metrics, but the history of the JLT award is a means to reinforce that metric so we can boost the impact factor of the journal. That's behind it. And also, Connie mentioned it, the invited papers, the special issues, they gather a lot of citations. So you want that. So we got many special issues on board for OFC, ECOG, many others. Also, I mean, not just to boost the impact factor, of course. This is all high quality stuff, but there is a sales and marketing aspect associated with that. That's very important. Now, those who know me, technology, I mean, no bullshit publications is super important to me. So we try to have the highest technical standards out there from the editorial board, only really top known researchers being on there, and making sure that we live up to at that time what I believe is the core of an IEEE journal, which is the engineering. One of the E stands for engineering in the IEEE, and that's often forgotten. We're not as scientific. We're not an organization that does science only. And as such, engineering and real world applications are super important. So that's what I placed a lot of focus on. And in the steering committee, which was also mentioned several times, a very important committee where you meet twice a year, and discuss the strategy of a journal. I always ran that journal as a product, sort of, because it is a product for a customer. And later on, Karen Liu, who I don't think she's here. She is at the show floor. She now works for Nubis. I got to know her at the steering committee, and we immediately jibed because she's a marketing person and she wanted the same thing. How do we market this thing? Do we get it out there? So that was very important. Um, yeah. So I think I said most of what I wanted to say. I'll close with one other anecdote, just to tell you that leading a journal is a lot of work. The I calculate, so what happened in my case, my son took violin, went to a violin school every Saturday in New York. So I drove in the early morning and was there until the late evening. So I had 10 hours of pure JLT time every Saturday. And if you rack that up over 6 years, including the time you spent during the week on it, it's way more than a year. It's probably between 1.5 and 2 full-time years of work. And if you calculate that in terms of salary, then you know what Bell Labs invested in that journal in terms of money. That's something that cannot be left unmentioned. I mean, it's a huge amount, and it's a huge amount of work, but it's great. And when I came to the end of my tenure as EIC, I got a present, and it was like an Apple Watch. And I'm not so much the technology geek. I do have an iPhone, but otherwise I don't have any Apple products. But my son does, the violin son, right? So I come home with the Apple Watch, and his eyes glaze over, and guess who owns that watch now? Uh, okay, so yeah, with that, I give it over to Gabriella.